Slash Dupe, episode 6.
Hello and welcome to Slash Dupe, the movie pitching podcast with a twist. Everybody gets the same title, some time to prepare, and then brings their idea to the table. One of us hasn't had the title in advance, though, and that is our dupe today, Ryan. How are you feeling?
Hey Sean, I'm doing good. Ryan Scott, your favourite dupe whose ideas aren't on a loop.
I imagine this is going to be
That's
a
getting
running
worse.
theme. They are worse.
We need to stop this now. There's only been 2 and they've got worse.
Well, we'll put it out. If the public don't want it to happen anymore,
They
put it
don't.
out.
I'm going to just tell you now.
Can I represent
They
the
don't.
public? I don't.
Yeah, thanks. Johnny has spoken. So our other two guests today have been given the title in advance. Dan, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. Really well.
Good. Are you excited about today?
This one's a good one. I am excited about this one.
Good. Any more or less
I've got it
prepared
going.
than last time?
I am, as always, I'm Schrodinger's readiness.
Schrodinger's readiness. That we need on a t-shirt. And our guest today is Johnny. Johnny, how do you feel about the title today? How you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. I feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think this title gate was. I know you're a classy show, so let me jump right in by saying it gave me creative constipation for a long time, and then just suddenly, like a medical procedure,
Just dropped out of you.
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Looking forward to that. And I'm Sean, your peerless moderator, who will be picking a winner at the end of the episode. But if you want to know why I'm picking a winner and what happens to them, you'll have to stick around to the halfway point to find out. So without further ado, our title today is Songbirds of Jupiter.
Ooh.
Songbirds of Jupiter. So Dan, would you like to give us your idea for the title Songbirds of Jupiter?
I would absolutely love to give you my idea. It is a Bollywood movie, and in fact, a series of Bollywood movies. And they are touted as the Bollywood Harry Potter Percy Jackson movies, but for grown-ups.
Okay.
Because Bollywood. And it's based on the idea of the Bayangoma, which are from Bengali folklore. They're prophetic birds capable of imparting knowledge of the future to those they deem worthy. And
Wow.
they could either speak directly to the person, or in most stories, they sang as a bird, and the people that heard it received a vision of their fate. And so it's loosely based on, so the Bollywood idea is that all of these people are eventually going to be based on Roman and Hindi gods, or the sons and daughters of those gods. That's the Percy Jackson bit. And I don't know if any of you've seen Baahubali, the beginning, or Baahubali 2. And if you haven't,
No, I have
you
not.
are missing out. Like, I can't tell you how
How would
much
you
you are
describe it
missing
to
out.
us? What are we missing out
It
on?
is Lord of the Rings Bollywood style.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's amazing.
It is, it's epic. Honestly, I want to ruin it because I want to tell you how amazing the film is. At one point, a bunch of soldiers are infiltrating a massive castle, and they bend palm trees down, all stand on them, and the palm trees fire them into the air, and in midair they create a turtle shell with their shields, and they land inside the castle and burst out and start. That's the minimum of the amazingness of Baahubali. So it's kind of got that epic Troy epic feel, you know, that sort of Odysseus and the Odyssey, the Iliad, kind of that epicness, but Bollywood. So it starts off with an elderly woman, as most Bollywood movies do, and she is looking after a bird, and a young man enters her domicile and asks to borrow the bird, and she says no. And he kills her and takes the bird in front of her adopted son.
Oh,
And
okay.
the adopted son stands up and vows to avenge her death. And of course, the big bad looks at the screen and obviously beats the child to the ground with a backhand, nothing more, and then leaves. And this songbird helps the baddie predict the future see his fate. So he ends up becoming the ruler of the whole land. And the songbird only gives fate to those it deems worthy, or if it's somehow trying to create a worthy outcome. So it tells him, much like the witches in Macbeth, tells him that only a god can defeat him. So he feels safe. But it turns out that adopted boy that he slapped to the ground happens to be, and the boy doesn't know, the son of a god.
Twist.
And so cue epic team building, love and hijinks and dancing. That's my pitch for
Love it.
Songbirds of Jupiter.
Now, of course, you're normally quite prepared, so I imagine you've got a few musical numbers for us.
I have, and unfortunately, I've already put them in a music library, and you have to pay me for them. So, but most of it will start with ding, and that's it. And that's when you'll know
that was beautiful.
Is that the 8 seconds of royalty free that we get?
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, and you know it's going to be genius from that.
So, I mean, in traditional Bollywood, as far as I know, because I did a terrible film school course on it, and I watched Lagan, which is brilliant. The course was terrible. The film was brilliant. Lagan is about cricket and about a cricket team and how they sort of fight the English on their own sort of terms. And it's brilliant. But I know that in a lot of Bollywood films, with my limited knowledge, that the singing and the dancing is often a replacement for something. So when there's a moment of heightened tension, when the lovers are about to, they want to tear each other's clothes off, but they can't because of, this is not a film for, it's not a porno film. They have to express it through song and dance.
That's right. It's not too dissimilar to musicals, really, in that any time the emotional state gets beyond, and we are talking it's epic in the first place, but that's when the dancing tends to come in that it's expressing their internal turmoil externally.
So is he going to have a love interest then? Because I believe, again, Bollywood needs to have a good love interest.
It does need to have and what I really enjoyed about Baahubali was that his love interest was also an extraordinary warrior. And so she held her own. I mean, because it's Bollywood, she wasn't quite as good as him. And she's like well known for being an amazing archer. But of course, in the middle of the heat of war, he manages to do better than she does at archery. Because,
of course. Bollywood.
But she held her own, and she was like a fearsome sort of guerrilla fighter. And I like the idea that maybe that bleeds in. Or maybe she's the daughter of another god. So that's why I see this being sort of a... And maybe he doesn't kill the baddie at the end, but she does. Although I don't know how much we can turn around too much Bollywood sort of genre. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of demigods that he eventually meets, or quarter gods, because really he has to be the biggest god of them all, doesn't he? The most god-blooded than everyone else.
I think it should definitely be like the daughter of Shiva, or the daughter of Rama.
Absolutely, the granddaughter of Shiva, or the great granddaughter of Shiva, something.
So would they accomplish their goal at the end of this film, and then the sequel is?
I think it's a 6-7 film series. Like they had this planned at the beginning. So Baahubali again, like the end of the first film, just doesn't really end, and you're like, what? Oh, okay. And then the beginning of number 2 has a whole nother backstory that goes back before film 1 and then comes back again to bring... And I think it's just beautiful. It's just epic because you're on some kind of amazing trip. But it is amazing. So that is definitely my touchstone, is Baahubali. And because you haven't watched it, I'm excited for you this weekend because it's going to be what you want to watch. Honestly, tonight...
the watch list.
Crack out a curry.
From top to the top.
Watch Baahubali. It's on Netflix.
Crack out a curry. And do the lights bulbs.
Do the lights.
And
do
pat the dog. Pat the
crack
dog.
some pepper. And we can say this. Obviously,
we can make these jokes.
We're allowed.
We are all of us today. Actually, this is maybe the first episode we've ever done where we're all part Asian. We're all part Indian. Is that
Love it.
I know
with
Dan's
all
giving
very English
Johnny
names.
a funny look, but
I know
but I can
Johnny.
guarantee you he is
No, I know I am. Sean and I have had this
more
discussion many
Indian
times.
than I am, actually. But yes,
Allegedly.
allegedly, yeah. Who knows? So yeah, I mean, I think that it's it's the first Bollywood pitch we've had, so
Yep.
I'm extraordinarily happy about that. And I do genuinely think like Bollywood films are. I've only seen a handful of them, like really genuinely only a handful, and I feel really guilty that like that. Plus, I think Spanish cinema is a huge, both of the huge areas of cinema that I don't focus on. I haven't focused on at all. But this could be the opportunity to bring. I mean, if you made Songbirds of Jupiter, if it took the notion of gods and this sort of, I mean, they make these epics all the time, and they love them in the Western world. So if you took that and you it could be one of the early ones to be adopted into
To cross
sort of
over. I
Hollywood
think
mainstream, right? Yeah,
Songbirds of Jupiter is definitely the English translation,
Right.
and I wonder whether this is a Bollywood film where they dub over in English. That doesn't happen as often. In the epics, they have to do them in so many languages in the first place, and they actually end up having different actors voice them in different languages, obviously. But some of the people that voice over are as famous as the people that are actually playing the parts, and that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I've heard that. So we'd need to get the Brad Pitts and the all that sort of the equivalents of them.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
was just going to ask Dan, what role is Scarlett Johansson playing?
Any of them, absolutely any of them, obviously.
Name a god. She'll do it.
She's there.
She's there.
Like I remember seeing this. This film called Chachi 420, I think it was called, which was the Indian version of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right.
What?
And it
Oh,
was,
I did not expect that when you said 420. I was like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. But so this is a whole weekend of Bollywood watching,
Yeah,
right? Baahubali, both of them,
Yeah.
and Chachi 420. It is controversially, because Mrs. Doubtfire, great film in itself, right? Mm-hmm. I think I enjoyed Chachi 420 more
Wow.
because at one point the dad stroke auntie, of course, is on a motorbike and jumps over a bridge, like ramps up over a bridge. There's explosions and elephants in the background. I kid you not, it is everything. That moment, I think I must have watched it when I was about 11 or 12. Oh no, maybe I didn't. I think it's later than that. I must have watched it in my early 20s, but I can still remember that one shot. So a little bit of
nothing in Mrs. Doubtfire that can even come close to that, is there?
No.
Robin Williams dressed up as a woman does not come close to
If
that
he was on a
moment.
motorbike jumping off of like the Empire State Building with elephants in the background, then maybe.
Yeah, then it's a close one.
I mean, in New York, surely it would have to have like King Kong in the background or something.
That's right.
To have the same effects.
Yeah. I even like the idea that maybe there's a remake of this. Would they do a remake of this in the Western world? Would they because they do that all the time. They remake.
I think maybe the remake gets happened of the first film and it fails miserably.
Yeah.
Fails miserably, and then someone like one of the critics says, well, why did they even bother making this remake? It was perfect, by the way it was in Bollywood, and that encourages the Bollywood from this one sort of review. It encourages the Bollywood producers to pay for the English dub, but they use the actors that were in the remake as the voices in the original, and it smashes. It absolutely smashes, and it starts a new Harry Potter, Percy Jackson level of fever.
And I also
And I'm not going to lie,
remember...
I want to watch it. Definitely, I'm in. I'm sold.
It's too good. It's so universal, isn't it? And like, who doesn't love a bit of energy, a bit of music, a bit of romance, a bit of grandiosity? You know.
Yeah.
And I remember when before Asian cinema had really sort of took off here, you had proponents of it like Tarantino, who would say presented by Quentin Tarantino, and he would release these films that a lot of other territories wouldn't get. and it obviously influenced a lot of his work. And he would release them, and he would be, him and through his companies would sort of push them. So sort of like that, a critic or a filmmaker says, no, hold on a minute, these are the films you need to watch, and they're better than anything that Hollywood is producing. They're more earthen, they're more sort of, there's more energy, there's, and people are bored of all of the sort of tropes. I think they're bored anyway of a lot of the tropes of blockbuster films these days, and the sort of homogenized nature of it. So something from another territory could be the thing to enliven it. Yeah.
And maybe it is that. Maybe it's Tarantino comes out in an interview and says, "Why did they even bother remaking this? The original was the best. Do you know what? I'm gonna get it over," and he does it. Yeah, he brings it over, or not? Maybe not Tarantino. Someone just steps up and says, "I don't know why we've done this in Hollywood. Why did we do this to them?"
So Dan, have you got a cast in mind?
Well, I haven't got a full cast in mind because I have a limited knowledge of Bollywood actors, to my sadness. But there were definitely a few people that so Anushka Shetty, I think her name is, she was like the mum in Baahubali, and she's great. She's absolutely amazing, and I feel like she was underplayed in. No, she wasn't underplayed in that. She was absolutely amazing in it. But it's like I wouldn't want her to be the woman that dies at the beginning, unless in some amazing, of course, it's Bollywood, she comes back. She is reincarnated as herself. So one of the amazing things in Baahubali is that at one point, the guy who was playing Baahubali, the main guy, we go back in time to see their parents arguing. But they don't change the actor. The guy that plays Bahubali's dad is played by the same guy, and it's just cracking because you're like, what is going on here?
Because they didn't want to, age him differently or something. He wanted to still look like the star he was. They've got this guy called
Prabhas, and he is, I mean, it's a masterclass in Bollywood, right? And I would want him in this, but I think he's probably a little too old for my main character, but he could be one of the swaggering, like a Hercules kind of version, like he comes and helps. And now that I've said Hercules, now I kind of want to put a little bit of hip hop in, like Bollywood rap that goes in on that. So I think I'd probably want him and Rana Dagubati, I think his name again. He was the baddie. He was and his jawline is just extraordinary. So I think I'd probably want him back as the baddie again, because he was horrible, but perfectly horrible. He was so sexy that you loved him being horrible. You know what I mean? That was great.
Bollywood does that spectacularly, doesn't they? Don't they? They do. Sexy villain.
Yeah,
they've got it.
And Tamana was also in this. She was what we called her the ghost ninja when we watched it, because she was the one that was the amazing archer or whatever. But she brought such a grace and a strength to the part that I mean, it sounds like I'm basically recasting from Baahubali, but I kind of am, because it's exactly the kind of film that I want made. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to capture that, but do it better, which I can't because it's perfect in the way it is. And then we've got like Anil Kapoor, like a really old school, the old lines, and he's a bit like the Gary Oldman of Bollywood, so he's got to be in there.
Right.
The thing is, I could literally cast about 100 people in this movie because it's that epic, spread over 7 films. I mean, think about the Harry Potter series. We literally have every English actor that's ever existed at some point in their face. And so I feel like it could be, and we get some of the old school Bollywoods that maybe haven't seen the light of day for a while, that they come out and they're there, and everyone's like, oh look, like when we get the Stan Lee cameos in the superhero movies. So, which would be great for the whole Bollywood culture and the watchers, and maybe in Hollywood and the Western world we might not know. But it might be like one of those opportunities where we go and see it. And like when I see went to go and see Black Panther, and I definitely felt like a fish out of water. Like I missed some of the references, and I'd love to go and see Bollywood with a Bollywood film with a bunch of Bollywood lovers and miss all the references and have them cheer for great things that I wouldn't get and want to go and find
because
out.
then that's the sort of gateway. Exactly, it's the gateway to finding out what those things are, and then you sort of something else happens to you. You sort of go up a step, don't you? You sort of level up.
So narratively as well, we've had the obviously Western cinema is very, very prevalent. We hear small things about Spanish cinema in England, and I suppose Japanese narratives with anime and manga are a little bit more mainstream. But actually, the idea of the Indian story archetypes and narratives is woefully underplayed here. I would love to experience that. Yeah, I really like what you said about Fish Out of Water. That'd be an amazing experience to sit through that film.
And there's so many rules about it. Like I don't know enough, but when I was in a show, which we had to do a lot of sort of Bhangra dancing and stuff like that, and there's like Bollywood faces. There's certain faces that you have to pull, and you get cast because of your ability to be able to manipulate and do these faces well. It's a bit like commedia, actually. There's certain characters that always appear in Bollywood films, like caricatures almost, but they have to be that because it's a specific style. And so the baddie always looks at the screen with one eyebrow raised as it zooms in on his face, but that means something very specific, and that's really interesting, and I want to know more about it, and I hope I haven't just made that up. But I did hear about it. So, and if I have, we need to make it that I think.
Well, one thing I was going to ask was a lot of these films that are cropping up on Netflix. There was that one with Chris Hemsworth recently that went on Netflix. This was set in India, and but it's an Asian-funded film, but getting Western actors in. So would this film maybe pull on? You've got a huge expanse of sort of Asian actors that work in Hollywood currently. Would they try and?
So I mean, I like the idea that happened. I mean, with the story we've created, it was a Bollywood film that then got dragged over or got remade. So he might be actually dubbing one of the voices. But I don't think we would see intrinsically Western actors in the thing. I think that's the beauty of this. Like Johnny was saying, this becomes a culture awakening. Yeah, because we kind of think as Bollywood as kind of a joke over here, and it's
sometimes
it's high grossing. Like it turns over some good monies, and it is really popular. And honestly, I'm going to say it again. Go watch Baahubali, and then have.
But I am going to watch that this weekend because I think you're right. The way it can be seen or derided slightly, but then the other half of our culture, being British, is we come from a country that invented Morris dancing. So, on what moral high ground are we making these judgments that Bollywood isn't good enough?
What I found interesting is I watched this with a group of people, and we watched it. I don't know why I found it when we were watching it. I was on a show we were watching after a show, and they were falling on the floor about how ridiculous it was that this man like leapt up a waterfall, like climbing one hand by one hand in the most amazing thing, and they're all laughing about how silly it was. And I mean, we all went to see Thor Ragnarok, right? And there's
incredible,
but no one laughs in a superhero movie when someone flies 500 foot in the air, calls down lightning, and blasts everyone else. But
their hammer fast enough to make them fly. That's
but an Indian guy climbing faster than a normal person up a waterfall is hilarious, and I found that amusing. Like I thought that was quite interesting. So I'd love that.
I think those culture shocks. I think it's important. I think it's an early part of developing and sort of understanding where another. Because you sort of don't know what these things mean. Why would people find this entertaining in a different way to me? But then it sort of opens a gateway for you, right? I mean, I definitely think that people can sort of do. People will sort of laugh at first, but then they'll some parallels will start to be drawn, and they'll start to think, oh, hold on a minute, I'd much rather watch Baahubali than watch the third film in the 50 Shades of Grey series, or a Twilight
or the first
film.
one. Yeah, or any Twilight, but absolutely.
I love. I was actually quite struck. So was my fiance. Actually, was quite struck by the death of Irfan Khan. I don't know how to pronounce. I mean, I should know how to pronounce Asian names better. But I just because first of all, I think Asian actors have a register or a range in their voice when they speak that is just and the male actors particularly. I know this is an unusual thing to say, but they exude. I wouldn't. Okay, you have to help me here because it's not sexiness necessarily, but they exude something in their voice that is. It's like
Je ne sais quoi.
it is, yeah, or whatever the. If only I knew the Urdu equivalent of that, yeah, or the Hindi equivalent. But there's something
It's like
sort
a broodiness, isn't it?
yeah, it's a broodiness. It's something very primal, like the Asian voice can be incredibly sultry, and as an actor, he's got those beautiful big eyes and everything. And like he was in Life of Pi, sort of most popularly in the West. And then I went to see him because my fiance loves puzzles, so I took her to see him from Puzzle, and he died. He died in April this year. And so it's like, and I've actually felt something. I didn't feel much when other actors passed away, but you feel, I don't know, there's something about Asian actors that like really can let you into their soul. I know that's a really silly sort of obvious cliche thing to say, but then that's what Bollywood is, isn't it? It's a big open sort of raw emotional experience. And so for some people at first that is something to be scoffed at, particularly the repressed English people that we are. But then you push past that and there's a real sort of honesty there, I think, is part of what I'm getting to.
Do you think that might be because obviously India is such a large subcontinent and it's got so many different cultures and languages and peoples there that if we look at some other Eastern Asian languages, and I know almost nothing about this, so I'm just guessing here, that they have... You're right when you talk about the tone, that it's not just the way you say something, but the intonation with which you say it can change the meaning. And because they are famously playing to, as Dan said, huge audiences, they have to be able to speak in a way that can melodically represent emotions across different cultures on the continent. So perhaps that gives them something that the way Western languages are far more limited. We don't need to worry about our tonal representation of the word as long as we get the word right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
that's why we
fascinating.
end up bursting out into song and dance, is because that is universal.
So Johnny, I'd love to hear your idea for Songbirds of Jupiter.
Okay, well, mine feels drastically underprepared, having just heard Dan's now. It's not quite a love letter to cinema. I was a little bit worried at first when he mentioned this sort of possible Roman crossover, because I heard the word Jupiter and the other part of my heritage being Anglo-Italian. I was instantly right on that, like, this is it, I'm leaning really into this. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the plot. I've got a vague outline, and I'm going to introduce actors as we go.
Okay.
Now, what I will say up front about this is the exact kind of film I want to see. And consequently, I already know it's going to be a flop. It's the exact kind of film that will have no character names and will confuse 99% of everyone, except for those glorious elites like ourselves who will pretend to understand it. So the film opens with a slightly John Wick-looking Keanu Reeves guiding a slightly older, bearded, long-haired James Callis.
Okay,
absolutely. Of Baltar from BSG.
Yeah, we mentioned BSG in the last episode, actually, but yeah.
Oh, handy. To a dingy-looking club in the rain in a unspecified city, but it's dark, it's miserable. They go into this club, and Ian McKellen is playing piano.
Okay.
So
you can stop there. I want it.
That's great.
Also, how did they get Ian McKellen? I mean, that's what I want.
This is amazing.
Just you wait. This is a bit mad. Okay. So James Callis is the main character. As I said, no one has any names, so for the moment I'm going to call him the man, and I'll refer to everyone else as their actors' names where appropriate. So Keanu Reeves turns around to the man and says, he's here. Just wait till he gets off stage. The man waits and goes to talk to Ian McKellen, and he says, I've come, and Ian McKellen cuts him off and says, you've come to ask me a favour. I know, many do. I will give you what you seek, but first you must help each of my daughters. And the first daughter then appears, and he says, if you do whatever they ask and help all 5, I will grant your request. Until then, do not tell me what it is. He agrees, and Marion Cotillard walks over.
Great cast.
Absolutely. And she leads, she says, come with me. And they walk down the street at night in the rain. They have this conversation about what he wants. And he says, I'm trying to get home. I need to get back to my wife, my kids. They need me. And then they go to this rundown apartment building where homeless people in the hallways are malnourished, they're a bit starving. He's got to sit there and watch as they kind of go into this family room, and they sort of helping counsel this family through grief of someone dying. And they both have to explain to the small boy what death is and how they've lost their loved one. And it's kind of making him really complicit in this explanation to this boy of what death actually means. As they sort of leave this apartment, he rages at her that that's ridiculously unfair. They didn't need to be that cruel to the boy. Why were they doing this? And she sort of asks him why he finds death so frightening when it's completely natural.
Yeah.
But she thanks him and says, I'll hand you over to my sister. And sort of they go outside, and out there, looking like a cross between a weekend at a festival, meeting Tim Burton goth, smoking a cigarette, is Emily Browning.
Yes.
Wow.
Good choice.
Of American Gods, for me, that be the absolute go-to for this. She goes, right, go help my sister. And Marion Cotillard goes. So he goes with Emily Browning, and they go to watch a live band at a dingy club that she just talks her way into. And she's sort of a bit petty, childish, quite kind of sweet. But that kind of goes quite quickly. She starts pressuring him to take drugs in this club. And he says, no, I'm not doing this. That's not what I do. I've just got to get home. I'm just going to help you. I'll do whatever you want. And she says, well, I want you to do the drugs. If you don't do the drugs, I'm going to tell Dad that you didn't help. So he takes these hallucinogenic drugs, and basically the club turns into a horrific trip. Horrors, demons, people laughing at him. All the time she's sort of dancing around him. She's been like, isn't this great? Isn't this brilliant? As he's just having this horrific nightmare. It eventually wears off, and she leads him back out of the club, and he's sort of in this recovery mode, kind of trying to retching and feeling awful. And she leads him down to a river where she sort of kind of splashes him with a bit of water and hands him over to the third daughter, who is Melissa Fumero.
Nice.
Okay.
Just lining them up.
All right. I mean, yeah, a lot of I cast these people first, actually. The daughters
I kind of
I built the film around.
Is it because this is your 5 people, Johnny, that if you get the opportunity out of your marriage to sleep with, is that why this is the
your
5?
wife gives you 5 people to sleep with, and you've listed them out.
Laminated.
How dare you suggest something so crass and accurate? No, actually, just genuinely, because I think these are obviously wonderful actors, and their personalities really suit. The fact they happen to be ridiculously attractive is a wonderful byproduct. So he hands over to daughter 3, and Melissa Fumero is waiting for a ferry. So they get on this ferry together, and he opens up about his life and the experiences, how he's worked hard, he's never really very happy. He always realizes that he loves his wife and kids, but he could have done more with his life, and he's really frustrated. She points out all the people on the riverbank and the rest of the people on the ferry and says, they're all mindless. This is how people live. They don't really think about what they can achieve until it's too late. And so their time together is just this quite placid, contemplative boat journey. At the end, they get off the docks, and she says, I must introduce you to my uncle, who is Patrick Stewart.
Oh, what? Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. Jeez, I love it.
Like headlined as the return, of
I love it.
Professor
Absolutely.
X and
Magneto.
Saying you've and he's a little bit more jovial than Ian McKellen had been. Says, I saw you made a request of my brother. Everyone does this. So I see you've been roped into helping the girls. And he sort of intimates that daughter 4 is where almost everyone gives up.
Right.
Okay, daughter 4 is the nightmare daughter. And so you're then led up to this wonderful house, sort of mansion on a hill. This is kind of all happening over the course of one night. So it's fairly early hours of the morning. and we meet daughter 4, who is gothy sex on legs, I wrote on my notes.
What a surprise.
And when I say, yeah, my type. And when I say who it is, it might shock you. But this was very, very deliberate casting.
Okay.
Alison Brie.
Okay.
I get it.
But she's
No, I
got
get
some
it. I
range.
get it.
That
Yeah,
woman,
yeah.
as an actress, she's got some range.
She has, but I think what she's amazing at is that sweetness and light. And when you meet her, she's sweet, she's light, she's charming. I don't want to say kind of manic pixie girl things, that's a trope, but sort of leaning into that trope on purpose. And she says, "Oh, I just need some help with my chores. Come up and help me. I've got an apartment upstairs." And so they go up to her apartment, and it's all painted red with weird artifacts and a large open fireplace. And, you know, one thing leads to another, she attempts seducing him. And he's really like, no, I'm married. And she says, "Do you want me to tell my dad that you failed? This is where everyone fails. Can you not do this?" And he sort of starts going along with it because he's thinking of his wife. And as it kind of starts, before we actually get to anything illicit, it sort of goes weird. And she starts mentioning things instead of sexy talk. Things like, "I know that you killed your neighbour's cat when you were 7.
I mean,
He's
that's
like,
still
"What?"
sexy talk for me, but
To each their own, Master Scott. And she starts bringing up all his secrets. And what should be kind of quite playful foreplay turns to cruelty, scratches, whips, not in a sexy way, but just in a quite torturous way. And he's in the state of being kept kind of semi-aroused but completely tortured all the way through. And it's literally hellish. He's sobbing, saying, "Why are you doing this? Please let me go." And then she turns around and says, you can't leave. You belong to me now. You deserve this." And this bit of the film's going to be really uncomfortable. The energy is supposed to be uncomfortable here, because he actually somehow, plot hole, pushes her off, gets out. He kind of flings through the final door, and the blinding white light, and then he's standing in a field. And Gal Gadot is on a picnic blanket.
Of course she is.
This is definitely Johnny's
This is exactly
list.
where I would like Gal Gadot if she's amenable. I would like her on a picnic blanket if that's okay.
Absolutely, like, lovely picnic. He's at this point feeling really sketchy. This night has not gone how he's expected. She says, please sit, eat with me. And it's perfect. It's just this lovely picnic, and they're talking. And as they talk, he just feels all the weight of the world falling off of him. He feels at peace. He thinks he's a trick, and he kind of says, "Look, I want to see your dad. If this isn't a trick, let me see your dad." And she says, "Well, of course, you're free to leave anytime you like," and reaches her hand. And then the camera pans, and we see a Italian villa style building with just a table outside, a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and Ian McKellen sat there. And so he goes and sits down in, kind of pours him a drink, this Tuscan landscape, the sea in the background. Very well done for surviving. What would you ask of me? "I want to go home." "Do you?" "Yes, I need to get back to my family." "But you already said goodbye to them earlier." And then we kind of flash back to everything he's done. And we realise that what this film is, he has died, and these are the 5 stages of the Roman underworld. The songbirds of Jupiter are Jupiter's messengers, and each of the women represent a stage of the underworld through which the soul must pass. And the end of the film is him sat there, and he says, "You have passed my test. You are free to do what you like." And he kind of sees Gal Gadot, he sees Elysium, he sees everything he's gone through. And he says, knowing that you can go, but you will have to do all of this again. You'll have to pick up your burdens. You'll have to take up the earthly pains. And the last line of the film, it kind of just cuts to his, I think, to Ian McKellen close up, and says, "So, what's your choice?" And then the screen goes black.
Nice.
I like it.
Okay.
Nice.
It's obviously written by the only person who could write this and not make sort of overly sexualize the women in a crass way.
Don't say Zack
I think
Snyder. Don't say that.
No, I'm going to say Neil Gaiman.
Oh, okay.
I think
yeah.
he does. I think he writes sort of quirky women in a way that doesn't just hypersexualize them. That actually makes them interesting, deep characters, but can use sexuality as a realistic facet of their personality rather than something to kind of throw to the male gaze. It's definitely directed by Darren Aronofsky, because literally who else could handle this? And the soundtrack is by Jessica Curry.
Yes.
Because I think she does plaintive things. Everyone kind of says, "Oh, this is the new Fountain, the new Donnie Darko."
Sure. Yes, that's perfect.
Like,
the sort of film that we would have discussed, when we were young, when it first came out,
Like-
as if we were the only two people in the world that understood it.
Like we all watched Sucker Punch and was like, it's the best thing I've ever seen because it's like all of the things I love
it's like
smashed to
subversion.
one.
Like the reason why they're so like hot and sexy all the time, and there's nothing to the plot, and they're all used, is it's on purpose. It's a message. It's the point of the film. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I love it. That's. But I like that you're elevating it above Sucker Punch. You're taking this idea that can actually be something seen as quite crass, or rather Johnny perhaps dealing with his 7 evil ex-girlfriends. But it can be seen as that, perhaps. Maybe I can draw
I have
parallels.
no idea what you mean.
I'm going to write a list of, in the description, I'm going to write a list of all Johnny's exes and how they relate to each one.
There's not enough time.
It could have seemed like that, but yeah, I think with the Neil Gaiman, Darren Aronofsky, which by the way are an absolutely perfect match, like absolutely superb. I think it's like Aronofsky's return to form or something, let's say, because I love The Fountain, I really genuinely did, and I think it's a film.
Me too.
And it's a film where, regardless of, and again, it's another film. Actually, we were talking about just recently films where you have a feeling where you want to laugh. It shows Eastern philosophy and it shows raw sort of emotion in a man, and it sort of jars something in you, The Fountain, doesn't it? It sort of makes you want to laugh at it. It makes you want to feel like, oh God, this is so uncomfortable. I find it unusual. But yeah, I think push past that, and there is something quite sort of emotional in there. So yeah, I like that you can take this idea that would get 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, but a couple of key reviewers, if you agree with this, Johnny, of course, a couple of key reviewers like, Roger Ebert's site or, Komodo, whatever, would give it a full 5 stars,
I think it'd be a film that in 30 years people look back on and say it's a classic, but it would not. It would not initially be received well. I mean, I think
because
when
all
I
the
was
teenage boys would become critics in 20 years' time and look back on it and go, it was a classic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because we were talking about cultures earlier, and we see a lot of the heaven, hell, dying trope and the Christian trope or the monotheism tropes of dealing with the afterlife. I love the idea of, obviously Roman mythology is essentially Greek mythology, and how, the third daughter represents Styx. You've got hell or Tartarus before you eventually reach Elysium. And that they represent these personalities, and it's a different way of dealing with his own grief, because it sort of makes the film rewatchable for me. Because the first time you're watching it going, oh, what the hell's going on? But then someone actually far more intelligent than myself would explain it to me, and I'd rewatch it and go, oh, I understand now. And I sort of like films that work on that multi-watch approach.
Yeah, I get that, totally. Yeah, or something where afterwards you can you go, okay, something spoke to me, but I'm confused. Let me go and seek out other people's reactions to it, and let me find out some of the bits I missed. And then Jesus, we're talking about lots of enlightenment in this episode, but then you come out of it enlightened, don't you? You sort of, you appreciate it with a new light. And then it gives it rewatchability, which I could argue we haven't actually thought about with any of the films we've been going through, really. I think this is... we haven't come at it from a focus of rewatchability, which I think is quite important, in the day and age of streaming and stuff.
Plus Keanu Reeves as Death. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's Death escorts him to meet the king of the gods, and then the whole thing begins. I just loved the idea of Keanu Reeves as Death.
Yeah.
But can I just say, this was so much better than my first idea, which had been... Because I'm not going to lie, I started Songbirds of Jupiter with, like, who are the songbirds? They're going to be messengers, so it's got to be daughters. Brilliant. And then kind of started with a female cast. My first idea had been to go as cheesy as possible. Jupiter's back and he's pissed, so he sends down his 5 avenging daughters to wipe out the human civilization that has spread over the solar system. And it was going to be so facile that of course they're going to invade the planet that's home to most human species at that point, Uranus. And it would have just been slightly like chonky, cheesy superhero, 5 avenging angels, all just cheesy one-liners, just destroying humanity on a planet.
Yeah, like the director of The Crow eventually did that one, Gods of Egypt, didn't he? And that was sort of, that was just...
Oh, that was so bad.
Tilt, wasn't it? Yeah, it was almost...
But this would be worse than that.
Yeah. I almost wish you'd pitched that one, but no, I appreciate that, Johnny. Thank you for giving us your pitch for that idea. I think it's genuinely interesting. Have you thought
Thank you very
about
much.
how it would be received in terms of trailers or posters or any of the marketing, or how would you? Because you've got to market it to get the teenage boys in there, but you don't want to trick them into thinking it's they're looking for a sucker punch, but actually they're getting something. You know,
I think baffling. I think it's sold completely wrong, because I think initially a lot of people who make trailers often do exactly that. They're marketing. So actually, I think it's sort of sold on the sexiness of these five women. And, is this guy going to cheat on his wife? Is it some kind of filthy night out? And then actually it's this really deep introspective movie that's about the nature of life and death and what do things mean. And so the trailer is probably what makes it flop, because it was not marketed to the right kind of people. They were banking on the teenage boy buck, when actually this is a movie that any intelligent human being could love.
Is the poster just Songbirds of Jupiter, but the lettering is made out of all of the actresses in various shapes?
yes,
100%.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Which is something Game and Aronofsky both said we don't want.
Absolutely
We want
don't.
this to be really down the line. Our marketing just completely overruled them.
Yeah, of course. And I like because you recommended a film to me a long time ago called Ink, and then what happened is I didn't take you seriously or listen to you, so then you bought it for me, and then which is what I do often, to encourage people I care about to watch the things I love. And it's got the flavour of Ink, definitely. Like not fully. I mean, it's not similar in many ways, but the flavour of something. But then you've taken the sort of some of the elements of Ink and given it, $150 million budget or something, in order to cast all of your actors in it, which I like. And I love that you haven't limited yourself with budget or imagination.
Oh no, well, why would you? I think this is the exact kind of film that actually could do with a blockbuster budget to really put. I mean, these actors themselves, or every single one of them's gold dust. Put them together. Who doesn't just want to watch McKellen and Stewart? But I sort of like the fact that they never meet in the film as well. So you spend the entire film. Maybe the trailer's cut so it looks like they have this big scene together.
Yeah, of course it is.
But they never do.
So at this point, before we hear our dupe's idea, Ryan's our dupe for this episode, I'll let you know why I'll be picking a winner at the end of this episode. At the end of the season, we'll have a short list of winning ideas, and those ideas will duke it out for in the semi-finals, and then you guys, as the audience, you will vote on the eventual winner. Now, the overall winning idea will be made into a proper trailer for a movie or TV show, so we're not going to make a movie or TV show that's ludicrous, especially not on these ideas, but we will be making a trailer based on that idea. So, I mean, really, there are no losers, because you're really winners. As I always say, the fact that you haven't been picked is probably better. Then your idea lives on in /dupe and doesn't have to be immortalised, on YouTube forever. I'm really excited about today's ideas, and I'm looking forward to yours, Ryan, your dupe idea for Songbirds of Jupiter.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to have to admit, this is the first one that took me a little bit, it hit me for six initially, because it's such an odd title. I'm sure when I've done my pitch, we'll get to know where you came up with this idea from, like what the origins of this idea was. And I think for the listeners out there wondering how I do it, it's quite tough because I could be writing a bunch of ideas, and then the second pitch could be, I started writing about the Roman gods, and then the second pitch coming out from Johnny was about that, and I had to scrap that through. So I've sort of gone for something that we haven't maybe done on here yet. This is a film about airship racing.
Love it.
Don't see enough of that, I think, in sort of film. I think the closest thing we had to it was Treasure Island, like the sort of the Disney animated one where they sort of have the cool like solar ships and stuff like that. So, and I want this film to sort of feel like it's an airship racing film, part heist, part adventure, sort of like Tintin and the Secret of the Unicorn. That sort of title. But then, and the title would be Songbirds of Jupiter. So the idea would be centered around airship racing, and each airship uses a crystal. that they put in the middle of their ship, and different crystals power differently, sort of like the way that, and conglomerates are in on this, right? Sort of like the way F1 is. So if you've got the money to build a bigger and better car, like back in the day you could have like 4 or 5 cars because you had the money to do it, and the smaller teams, they had to really push through their sponsors. And so that's what the sort of idea from this. So we center around this sort of like privately funded, like small privately funded team, but they're just not able to, they keep entering races, and like our pilot, she's really like absolute cracking pilot. She knows it, but she just hasn't got the hardware to do it. And I'm going to do a Johnny now and sort of say a couple of actors as we go through. But I just had this great idea as they're in the sort of, it would basically be the main girl. She'd probably have a like big bumbling idiot friend. Probably eats all the time.
A James Corden type.
A James Corden type, yeah, perfect. James Corden would be a great cast for this.
An insufferable, annoying twat type.
I like him. I know you don't like. Clearly, the Sean's aggressiveness towards him. Yeah,
because he's your touchstone, isn't it? And your life model.
And so they're in the sort of I can't think of the word for it. The pits for the airship racing, and
is that on the ground? Or did
I
these
think
things stay...
it would sort of, the ships would be in the air, and all the teams are on the ground. So sort of they let so you'd have like above the pitch.
Maybe when they climb the rope to get up there is when the person on the, I don't know what era this is in, but on the microphone, the sort of steampunk microphone, announces who they are as they climb, and they wave from the ladder. Swinging in the
it would be different. So the rich teams have an elevator, of course they do, and they have all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and these guys have to climb, but they speak to an old mechanic bloke who's going to be Tom Waits.
Yeah, I love it.
Nice,
that's brilliant.
And he tells them about the Songbird of Jupiter, and the Songbird of Jupiter was this ship that they were privately funded. They came out of nowhere. They wouldn't do any interviews, but it was called the Songbird because it would basically sing on the winds as it flew, and it was winning everything. And it was these people that they'd never seen before. And he tells a story about how the ship got raided one time and disappeared over the ocean, and no one saw them or where it came from and all that sort of stuff. So they get interested in it, and they want to figure out where it is. They get the maps out, and they start to sort of look for the ideas, and they find out that the wreckage of the Songbird is owned by this private collector. So then they try and like break it. So like clearly the James Corden type is like, they're good with the computers as well. So tries to like hack them in, guide them in, gets them in there, and they get into the collector's place, obviously get caught. But they explain about it, and what one says. Yeah, I've got Oscar Isaacs as the collector.
Yeah, good cast, Oscar Isaac.
And he's sort of like, he's sort of acting a bit weird about this, a bit mysterious about this. And so and then maybe the kids say something that he'd never heard of in his collection. And so they, work with it together, they explore it with him, and they go and try and find where this crystal was, because they know it was powered by a crystal, but they don't know how or what or why. I think at the same time, this is where the third person on the ship, who I haven't figured out, let's call him the Snake, right? He runs off and tells the conglomerates, because he's sick of losing and he wants to be on the winning team. Or maybe he's the co-pilot actually. He wants the chance to it. Real like foppish, good-looking guy. So that's why they're now getting chased by the conglomerate company. Sort of a bit speed racery. In fact, it's the sort of the small person up against the big guys. And having this sort of, I haven't exactly figured out what to do. Maybe I watched, I watched Fool's Gold recently.
I haven't seen it.
It's the one with Matthew McConaughey, where he's like, to tell everybody the truth, I'd forgotten that Sahara was called Sahara and thought it was called Fool's Gold.
Yeah,
so I
thought
Fool's
Sahara was
Gold
more
on.
of a touchstone, maybe.
Yeah. So I put Fool's Gold on thinking it was Sahara, and it wasn't.
When did they get into the desert?
Yeah. And I was like, wait, where's whatever his name is, like who played Sonny?
God, I don't remember who was in that film.
So I was like, I watched it. But what was quite cool is in that film they hide the treasure in one of those like pressure, like a blowhole, right? So it's really difficult to get into it because the water pressure basically hits you against the rocks. So something like that, something cool. They hide the rock, the crystal was hidden in a certain place. In the sort of Googling I was doing, I like the idea of a yellow sapphire is considered to be the stone, linked to, or the gem linked to Jupiter. So that's what they find, and they find the stone that powered the Songbird of Jupiter. And so they get it, and they're like, right, we can rush back, we can get back in. So they, she's, as you said, she's climbing up the airship. Old ex co-pilots in like the really fancy one. You can see he's got it, and they like go to put the crystal in to the ship, and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh Christ, and like it's not going to work. Yeah. Oscar Isaacs comes up on the ship as well because he's always wanted to do it, and then he
knows the knack, does he?
He knows that he was like, it's not a pilot, it's not a pilot piloting a ship, it's about the pilot and the ship being one. And so he like takes off this thing that he was wearing the whole time, which is almost sort of like I think he puts it on the main girl's sort of round her neck, puts the crystal in it, and when she puts her hands on the wheel, like the whole ship,
I love it,
like comes in. So it's like the pilot and the ship must become one. Now, and so Oscar Isaacs is now in the ship, and obviously they like absolutely neck and neck, beat out the ex co-pilot, win the race, become the new champions of the Songbird.
But that's great. I mean, that's great if you want it to be a little bit like what was that tween film that Weta Digital did all the work for it, about the roving cities that sort of.
Mortal Instruments.
Yeah, Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines. Yeah.
Mortal Instruments.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Was the name of the series? Yeah. So I think if you can go tween with it and you can have that sort of go down that route, but there's something about me that likes the idea of Oscar Isaac being the original captain when it went down.
So I think he was. I think that's what I was getting at.
So he pilots it, but she's like the world-class mechanic. She's the one that builds the ship, loves the ship, knows the ship. She's that sort of role within the team. But they're the whole time they're like, maybe one of them is a pilot, but then just not good enough.
Oh, and that's why matey boy, foppish boy, goes off to join
exactly.
the other team.
The pilot goes off to join the other team. So they're looking,
like
so they're trying. Oh, maybe you could be the pilot, and they're not quite good enough. But they don't need one because Oscar Isaac.
How about this? Like building on that, Sean. What about it's the reason they're not quite good enough as the pilot is because they're too small for the ship. Like the ships are all a standard size.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that when they get to do it, they go to put the jewel in. They're about to go back up their ladder, and their ship gets blown up by the big conglomerates.
Yeah.
So what are they got to do? We've got no time. We're down on our luck. We've got to rebuild the Songbirds.
Oh,
yes.
And so that's where it all comes together. Yeah. And so you get them that whistling sound as it just comes up when you think it's all over. And that's where she then puts the jewel on. I love that. That's an awesome idea. But she now fits in this new cockpit because it's a bit smaller, it's a bit sleeker, and it all comes together.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Because the thing is, Johnny, when Ryan was pitching the idea, I'm thinking, you know what? You talked to me about, and again, you're going to have to buy it for me like you did with Ink, but you talked to me about reading a fantasy book where the metal was some sort of...
Yeah, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Right. It's exactly your kind of thing.
So this could this be like a Brandon Sanderson, is that his name? Brandon Sanderson's sort of new series, when he puts Mistborn off to the side while he's waiting to come up with some more ideas. He works on this, and then it spawns from that into an Amazon Prime TV series or something.
I think... actually...
This seemed like his thing, Johnny.
It's too happy for Brandon.
Oh right,
but
flat out.
Would there be another fantasy author that you think, oh, do you know what? This is the sort of stuff they could do, and then.
Yes, we'll edit out the awkward silence as I look at my bookshelves and scan through. See, I was getting Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow vibes. Actually.
Yeah, I was really getting that,
and I was thinking that kind of feel.
Good
maybe. Oh, what's her name? Is it Rebecca something? I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Who did Becky Chambers? Who did a long way to a small angry planet?
Yeah. So ironically, that is a book you did buy for me after talking about it, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's one of the best books I've ever read. Genuinely. Particularly.
So we have on records tonight on podcast that I recommended two things that Sean's put off, and he's loved both of them. Good.
I wasn't thinking about an Amazon TV series, but actually it would work really well as a sort of TV series. Didn't they do Carnival Row was out recently, wasn't it? Which has the mystic element and the sort of fantasy element. And as you guys were saying, like a Sky Captain sort of meets steampunk. I mean, Sky Captain's a little bit steampunk anyway, isn't it? Sort of like... Yeah,
it has some elements. It's sort of something else, isn't it? It's sort of, retro.
My only thing with the series is that once you've resurrected the Songbird of Jupiter, that's
Where do
kind
we
of
go?
that's your denouement, isn't it? At the end. So
Well,
where do we go from there?
good point. I think you.
War
Well,
breaks
it's a limited series. That's what we'll do. No, it's,
Yeah, it's only
no.
3
You could definitely
episodes.
do. The sort of where, as you said, the privately owned team, like the people didn't know where they came from. So you have another racing league that they sort of would go to
Becomes
do,
like a
or
sort
maybe it
of
becomes like Worlds. Like if this is like set, let's say only in the UK, they're now going to go race like America. They're going to go race like those. They'll go to if we are going with, let's say, they could adapt the ship to be able to have like solar sails, so then they can go outside of the world. Like
I would recommend to anyone who's a fan of narrative. I'd recommend the game. You can get it on the phone on your iOS and Android. It's called 80 Days, and I think
yes,
that's got a tone that and a world that is it's like ours but completely different. It's just gone off in a completely different direction, and it's just so
By Inkle Studios
yes, exactly, yeah, who are fantastic.
and scored by the wonderful Lawrence Chapman, I must add.
Who we're
oh,
going to get on for an episode of Slash Dupe at some point.
Yeah, I nearly picked him to be the person to score because actually I would genuinely love him to score my
He's a
idea.
fantastic. I mean, I love Heaven's Vault as well. I would recommend 80 Days is more in keeping with what we're talking about, but his score for
Yes.
Heaven's Vault is superb as well. It's just beautiful.
And it's out now on Spotify and iTunes. So totally plugging
Nice
my
one.
cousin.
Yeah. No, he's fantastic. Though, he really is.
I like it's family friendly. It's got a bit of action, a bit of danger, but I think that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Speed Racer as well. It has a similar thing, and we all love airships, and I don't think we see enough of them. So, as I said at the beginning of my pitch, and thanks for listening, guys, and contributing. Where did you come up with this title, Sean? It's such a weird one.
Yeah, you'll like this because I thought, and this is a little bit of an inside process sometimes. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. But sometimes I think of the guest that we might have on, and I have a whole list of titles. Some of them we've come up with together, some of I've come up on my own, some are suggestions. And I try and match a title with a guest, not specifically directly, but what is interesting for me is if I think, Johnny likes sci-fi, let me give him a title that sounds like science fiction. I'm interested in what he comes up with that's not what I would expect him to come up with. So, for example, I genuinely just thought of the first science fiction title. I thought of some lofty, weird, sort of mixed up science fiction title that lends itself to anything. I mean, it's just nonsense. I just made it up on the spot.
It's very Bioshock.
It's,
I
isn't
was
it?
going to go super cyberpunk with this one, like altered carbon world.
Yes.
For Songbirds
Well, I
of
think
Jupiter.
my idea actually. It's funny you say that. It's not very It's not very altered carbony, but it is a cyberpunk idea. So, no, I mean, in this case, the title came before the idea for me. I mean, I just thought, let's give Johnny a sci-fi title. He'll like that, and I'm actually really, really happy that it went fantasy. It went in a completely different direction, which is the fun of this podcast. It's the thing about it. But for me, I just thought I was recently reading Halo Jones by Alan Moore. Basically, it's what Tank Girl ripped off Halo Jones. It's just it's a cyberpunk. I wanted to do a cyberpunk thing on a massive space station, and it's an monumentally oppressed world, and it's a fascist sort of thing, but it's huge. It's the size of a planet. Earth's been destroyed, and it's set in the future somewhere. And Jupiter is the band manager because she's the only one with some get up and go. She's the band manager, and she's the band manager and the front woman of Jupiter and the Songbirds. And the Songbirds are her sort of ragtag, punky, sort of layabout, do nothing friends who are just like completely awesome and completely talented and kick ass, but they don't ever want to do anything. So it's just those guys complaining about the state of the world, and Jupiter being like, right, I've got what we're doing today, girls. We're going to sing at this parade, and we're going to rally the forces, and we're going to screw the government. And perhaps it's like something that is based on a serial comic that maybe it's each episode is a self-contained thing. So there's no overarching plot really. There's no sort of, they never take down the government or the regime, but every episode they think of a new way Jupiter thinks of a new way to sort of overthrow this hideous cyberpunk thing, and they do it and have fun and play their music.
I've just been watching a lot of cartoons with my little one, and we've been watching DC superhero girls, and it's basically all the like Supergirl, Batgirl. Notice they're all girls. Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Wasp, but they're done for like kiddies, but they're so really well done, and they deal with, as all the best cartoons do, really decent grown-up adult morals that you want to instill in your children, but do it through a fun way. He just notices that, you know, Supergirl's like flies through the air and knocks Zod into there's a whole underlying thing, like Green Lantern was stopping a tree being cut down, and stuff like that in the center. And it sounds, just on your pitch there, that would work really well as what is ostensibly I've said ostensibly a lot of times in these last
it's a good word.
Is essentially a kid's cartoon, but has so much for the grown-ups in it, and is like bringing in all that kind of anti-establishment, but coolness, but respect, and like there's more to life than just sitting around.
Yeah, I love it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually a better idea. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Sure, Dan, a question to you. You know, as you're saying, these sort of themes that run through the
Kids
shows you're watching
and stuff.
Does your little one ever ask you sort of questions like why is Green Lantern saving a tree?
Yeah, he does. Well, he gets that. The thing is, they're so well written. He gets that bit. There's some questions he asks, like, why is so-and-so doing this? Or what's that word mean? Or whatever. What is a blah, blah, blah? But he tends to get those really well. There's one called PJ Masks, which is brilliant. But it's the same trope every time. There's three of them, and they all have slightly different powers. And each week, one of them decides that their power is the one way to sort everything out. And the others go, well, why don't you let us involve? And they're like, no, I've got this on my own. And they fail. And the others come along, and they always say, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have tried to do this on my own. And the others go, that's okay. You were just excited, or it was our fault as well. We should have. And then they go and defeat the baddie. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's got those repeated morals, which sounds like these songbirds would have. Do you know what I mean? Like, the moral is we can do this. Yeah,
you sort of go for, well, maybe more of an ensemble. So I would say, like, definitely Jupiter is like the leader, but she's a bit of a shredder, she's a bit of a master splinter as well, where she's sort of, and then I'm getting more of a Turtles vibe, not in terms of the TV show, but in terms of each songbird has their strength and their weakness.
Yeah,
one does machines, one's a cool dude.
One loves pizza. So you could sort of, so definitely, I mean, I like the idea of them all being layabouts, or a couple of them, but then that's okay too. It's okay to chill out and be relaxed and take a step back, right?
Yeah, when they get going, they're a force to be reckoned with completely.
Yeah, I think you can do that. And there's some wicked, like, animations made for kids, and like, even adult animations, or perhaps not adult, but like Batman Beyond and stuff like that. There's some superb, like, deep and the X-Men animated TV series. So I want that sort of style, the sort of animation style of the, or even maybe some sort of Samurai Jack vibes. I can't remember the name of the creator of Samurai Jack, but he's fantastic. He did the Clone Wars, a couple of seasons of the Clone Wars as well.
Well, I think the world's been a much darker place since we stopped having Count Duckula on our screens. I'm not gonna lie. Fearless television.
Bring back Count Duckula. Hashtag bring back Count Duckula.
And DuckTales.
DuckTales
cartoon. Yeah. Best cartoon theme tune of all time. Don't at me.
So, all from the title Songbirds of Jupiter, we've had four very diverse ideas, and three of them I'm very, very excited by. We had Dan's idea of bringing, unintentionally at first, but being the film to bring Bollywood to the West and really sort of popularise it by being its own thing. It's and sort of being this sort of amazing, long-running high fantasy series in the vein of Percy Jackson or Harry Potter. And I think I've heard the word Baahubali more times than I. I mean, it's just become this.
I'm going to say it again. Watch it. Baahubali.
This sort of idea that brings a new cultural idea into people's minds. It brings a new cultural idea into people's minds, and it sort of opens them up and lets them experience something new and levels them up. We've had Johnny's beautifully pretentious idea that is Ink meets American Gods, which also has an Odyssey-like feel to it, but more than anything, it has Keanu Reeves' death. That's the most important thing to remember.
I'm sold.
Perfect casting, where somebody needs to save these daughters, these sirens, these figures that represent in their life their burdens, and so they can unburden themselves. Something that actually we've not really experienced very much, which is the idea of rewatchability. Something where you can film an odyssey, a journey, where afterwards you actually continue the journey. You seek this information online with your peers. You find a way to love this unlovable movie together in the little corners of the internet. So I think that's a fantastic idea. And we've had Ryan's idea. The Dupe idea was this grand, opulent airship race film with a sort of steampunk vibe, which we do not see enough of in films. Some Sky Captain throwbacks. Sky Captain's a wicked film.
Yeah,
it's so great.
It.
And Speed Racer as well. Like, it's too good, isn't it?
That ending, one of the best endings of a film.
Of Sky Captain. It's a fantastic ending. It's almost never been topped. Like, it is a perfect ending. Yeah.
You might say it was the Citizen Kane of its time.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, look, it's a film where it has this small versus big. You have mystery and intrigue and again another journey. I feel like there's lots of journeys in the title Songbirds of Jupiter, and I have to say it's a fantastic idea. A really close contender, Ryan. I just want to let you know that it's just on the edge of, like, because for a Dupe idea, that's a really, really solid, well-formed idea, and it came out without, Bob Disposal was a great concept and a great initial idea that was then exploded.
Building me up to let me down.
Yeah, yeah.
Dan.
Classic.
Yeah,
he is.
He absolutely is. But at least this time, he said to you, it's so close, as opposed to making it out that you were going to win before stabbing you in the heart. Yeah.
I didn't realise last time that I thought you knew by the way I was speaking it up that it would be for the old, the old fall. No. But, Bob Disposal came out organically between all of us, but your airship idea came out fully formed, and that's something to really be applauded. Not the winner, but an incredibly close.
But thank you very much.
But thank you for your time. Dan, the thing is, us making a trailer for a Bollywood film, it would be racist. Let's be honest. We don't know enough. It would just be flat out racist, and we
could do research.
And as much as that would be fun for other people to watch, and as much as the idea is in real life something we actually genuinely need, and I think all of us will. I would definitely go off and watch as many Bollywood films as I can.
I think we'll be okay, Sean. I know loads of white people who do Bollywood dancing, and it's fine.
Yeah, weddings.
It's not problematic
we
at
just
all.
Need the answer.
I know everybody who does the Jai Ho dance. It's okay.
Look, if you just watch Baahubali, I feel that's my victory.
Okay, and you've already won in that case because I will.
Brilliant.
So I have to make your idea for Songbirds of Jupiter a winner. I think that the idea is great, but the idea of making a trailer for a really pretentious film, the idea of doing that for you, and the idea of how happy you would be if we made that for you.
Ridiculously.
Happy. I feel like you've laid your dreams out in front of us, and you've been your pitch came from the heart and soul more than anything else.
I'm not sure that's the part of the body.
How dare you, Dan? I feel so seen.
And we've had many ideas, many pretentious ideas by accident, but never one on purpose. And
you've got to lean into it, haven't you? If you're going to be pretentious, mean it.
With that, it just leads me to thank everybody at the table. So Ryan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, well, you don't have to say it that angrily. I mean, just the outro, man. Come on.
You're just taking that the way you want to take it. I was very happy. Thank you.
I've let you down. Everybody, watch Baahubali. For the love of God, watch
You
Baahubali.
haven't just let me down. You've let your entire family down, is what's happening.
My entire lineage.
Yeah.
And thank you, Johnny.
Oh, thank you. It's been awesome. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Pleasure.
Also, check out Earth's Embers, which is Johnny's D&D podcast.
Yeah, it was a live action 5e Let's Play featuring a rotating cast of characters. So you can jump on at any point. We're just finished our second season now. That's been uploaded. And actually, Sean and Ryan are both in season 1, which is awesome. That's www.earthsembers.com. Please check it out.
Please remember to like and subscribe. You'll do us a favour by commenting and giving us your own title ideas, or who you think's been stunted, or who you prefer to win. And reviewing and sharing will make the difference. Those are the things that really make a difference for a podcast that's just starting out, to really sort of gain a foothold in what is undoubtedly during COVID a saturated market. But yeah, please sort of share, and please weigh in on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere you can. Just join us. So we need adjudicators to help us weigh in on the winners of each round. And then during the semi-final, it's up to you guys to vote on who you think should be the winner. All right, thanks everyone. Cheers, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Bye, everyone.
Well done, Johnny. Well done.
Yeah, well done, Johnny.
Robbed again.
Oh, you guys.
Racist towards your own race. That's the worst bit.
It's true. I'm the worst.
You're a traitor.
Recorded in the Capo Studios 2020. What's up, danger?